The aircraft was a KC-135 assigned to the 7th Air Refueling Squadron at Carswell Air Force Base. It had taken off at 8:30 this morning on a routine training flight, flying just in the immediate Carswell training flight area. That means it had not gotten out of the state of Texas on the refueling mission. Jack Jordan of Fort Worth was in his office just down the end of the runway at the time of the crash and described to Channel 8's Jim Green what happened.
Jim, I was sitting at my desk, and I noticed the plane had just come over, and it appeared to me that it was way too high. As I got up and I watched it, the plane coming in for a landing, the first plane, the wing to the left, as it got down, swooped a little bit. He tried to force it to come back up, and it all swung to the right and hit right on the right wing and the nose, and it all busted up into flames.
The body of the plane came to rest about 200 yards from the end of the runway. One engine was approximately 50 yards from the plane. One set of dual wheels was another 200 yards down the runway from where the plane struck. Apparently, all 5 crew members were killed instantly: the pilot, the co-pilot, the boom operator, who was responsible for fueling the planes they were up to refuel, and the navigator and backup navigator, all on board the airplane. There were 4 officers and 1 enlisted man on the plane. 2.5 hours after the plane crashed, Carswell Air Force Base firemen were still on the scene washing down gasoline, which continued to leak from the wing tanks of the airplane. Apparently, the fuel that had been in the storage tanks, the fuel which is used to refuel airplanes in flight, all burned up in the crash and explosion of impact. It has now been 2 hours and 19 minutes since this KC-135 hit the end of the runway here at Carswell Air Force Base. The 5th crew member body has just now been removed from the plane. An accident investigation board of officers has been convened. They will come here, study the wreckage, try to determine from what is left of the airplane what caused this crash. I'm told it may be as much as 3 days before all the wreckage is moved from the end of the runway. Jerry Taff, Channel 8 News on the move at Carswell Air Force Base in Fort Worth.
You might say the Democratic donkey balked several times this weekend at the meeting of the State Democratic Executive Committee. And it's clear that not everyone is leaving Dallas satisfied with the SDEC action. The controversial rules recommendation came up, of course. There was introduced a compromise set of rules hammered out between the Anderson and Brunson factions, and of course Judge Woodrow Bean objected.
I don't know whether we're 100% stronger today than we were yesterday, but I want to tell you one thing, that the way the rules have been adopted here today on the selection of your precinct delegates to the county and then to the state is a complete farce as far as the McGovern rules are concerned. If you adopt the proposals that are being submitted here today, the Democratic Party is certainly in for dark days in the state of Texas. Now, the most important thing that I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Anderson and Mr. Brunson, we have today, if we adopt the Brunson-Anderson rules, we have today said to 500,000 young voters, we have said today to 500,000 young voters, the Democratic Party does not want you.
It took more than an hour to get the Anderson-Brunson compromise gabbled through, including a minority report from the Rules Subcommittee offered as a substitute resolution. That was defeated by a 39-22 voice vote. Then, after another voice vote, the compromise rules carried, even though a plea for unanimity by SDEC Chairman Roy Orr was defeated. National Democratic Chairman Robert Strauss also spoke. He didn't talk about criticism leveled at him by Governor Preston Smith for his support of Ben Barnes, but he did pledge a good, orderly, and financed convention this year, and alluded, at least, to party differences.
I happen to believe that we can disagree very earnestly and very sharply on not only issues, but on individuals and on policies, and still maintain similar dignity and unity, and if we do so, we'll serve our party, our state, and our nation.
The Resolution Subcommittee also came up with a proposal that would put the question of school busing on the primary ballot for voters to decide on. Dr. Carl Burney, a member of the Rules Subcommittee, spoke against putting the question on the ballot.
We may disagree with what the courts have said, but the courts do serve, and the situation is under consideration by Congress, is under consideration by the executive branch of this country, and I think that we should leave it in their hands.
That resolution passed on a voice vote 34 to 27. It at least puts the Democrats even with the Republicans on May the 6th. Word from Austin, where the GOP is holding a similar meeting, indicates that their ballot will also contain the busing question. This is Phil Reynolds, Channel 8 News on the Move at the State Democratic Executive Committee meeting.
Well, these first few weeks, I'm just trying to hit the ball with metal and just trying to get a little of my rhythm down and just trying to make a little impression so I can make this ball club. It's a wide open race down here, and anybody down here in spring training's got a chance to make the club. So I'm just trying to condition myself to get to a peak where I can make it.
Is there any one aspect of your game that you think needs more work perhaps than others?
Well, I think if I keep concentrating, just trying to hit the ball at the middle instead of trying to pull the ball all the time, I think that's what I'm down here for, and primarily this spring. And if I do that sufficiently enough, I believe I can cut down on my strikeouts and probably hit for a better average also.
Does Williams work with you actively on a day-to-day basis?
No, Ted just works with the mental aspect of the game. He'll give you a few helpful hints now and then, but when he came up through the ranks, he was a self-taught ball player and I think hitter, and I think he believes that the hitters under him should be self-taught also.
Jeff, this is a tremendously young club. There are a number of guys that are in their early 20s. Given that, would it be a bitter disappointment to you if you didn't make the club this year?
Well, I think the only reason I'm down here for is to make the team, and I don't think I want to put anything else into my mind except for making the team. And if I would not make the team, I would be a great disappointment. Yes, I would.
Hey, Charles, first of all, I want to welcome you to Dallas, and I'm sure you're well aware that you're going to really have your work cut out for you this summer out at Thousand Oaks. So have you given it much thought?
Yeah, I've given a lot of thought. That's what's going to make me do a lot of extra work, that I haven't been doing. Plus, I'm going into the pros, and that's a new thing, And I'm going to do a lot of work. I know I got a lot of work cut out for me, so the only way to make it is I'm going to have to get out there and work, and that's what I plan on doing.
All right, the Cowboys drafted you as a wide receiver. If the coach would ask you to play another position, is there another position that you feel like you might can make the ball club at?
Yes, I think I can make it as a defensive back, because in my junior year, a couple of defensive backs got hurt, and they put me back there at defensive back. And in practice, I was doing real well, and I was going to start there if the other cat didn't, pull through. So I, had some experience there, and I think I can hold defensive back job down.
I don't see the answer in terms of competitiveness. I think there'll be a mutual supplementing of the efforts of the respective universities. I think that perhaps, too, there will be less distinction between the two types of universities as we go along. I think that would be healthy, as a matter of fact, though still, as I tried to indicate in my talk to the civic leadership at noon, it's important that church-related or private institutions be preserved. We don't want a state monopoly of higher education, but still, I believe that more and more there will be a drawing upon government resources for the public aspects of private university services. And at the same time, the independence of the private schools will not be dissolved. It will not be lost.
One part of that is to improve state and community correctional systems. So it no longer makes sense, as you're developing within the states a system to deal with more and more offenders in the communities in which they live, to have a federal system to take offenders, if they by accident come into the federal courts, maybe thousands of miles away from their local communities.
Sir, we are already heavily concentrated in our state penitentiaries with inmates. If we then add those currently in federal prisons, what are we going to do for space?
You're not going to have, from the federal prison system, persons who are as dangerous or any more dangerous than those in your state system. Also, Texas is going to find, if it would stop building buildings long enough, that if you will start putting some of your money into community correction, halfway houses, primarily probation, volunteer systems to involve more people in the community in helping fight crime, that your prison population could be more than cut in half within the next 5 years.
We're asking the city to draw up an affirmative action plan for including women in all areas of city employ, setting goals and timetables for how they will improve the ratio of women to men in all areas of city government. We're also asking them to change the maternity leave policy, the retirement policy, the grievance procedure, and all of the other areas that we have grievances in. We want a change in the city's personnel rules and regulations containing a statement forbidding sex discrimination. Right now, it does not have any. It does have a statement forbidding discrimination on the basis of race, color, creed, political opinion, but it says nothing about sex. That's one thing we would like changed. The affirmative action plan must be instituted by the city council. All of these things must be done by the council originally.
And stand up back there. We don't want this young man who's president of the Young Democrats. We don't want him to sit in council with us on this state Democratic Committee. We don't want their committee man or their committee woman to sit in council with us. Why, I even saw the other day where Preston Smith appointed, Mr. Anderson, if you will, appointed a student to one of the Board of Regents, and here we're saying to these young people, go elsewhere. We don't want you. Now, I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen of this committee, and I'll say to you, Joe Batson, Joe, You've been working with these young folks. You know what this is going to do. And I say to you that if we adopt the rules as they are now proposed right now, that we're making one of the greatest mistakes that we've ever made in our lives.
The state of Texas should not be sent to state penitentiary?
Absolutely. This is the experience in other states. California started 5 years ago putting its money back into community correction. It is now closing 2 prisons. It has closed 4 youth institutions. And it is finding that it has a lower rate of repetition of crime in this method than it had by its reliance on institutions.
How then would we press punitive action against those convicted of felonies such as rape, murder, robbery?
The same way you do now. I'd be the first to admit that we're always going to have some dangerous people who we have to incarcerate because we don't know how to rehabilitate them and they don't want to be rehabilitated.